Friends, would you please join with me in the spirit of prayer? Come, Holy Spirit, come. Move in our midst and drench us with your love. Come, Christ, ground us and center us in the love that you live every single day of your life. Come, presence of God. Remind us of your still speaking and creating presence that makes all things new and invites us to life that is full of life. We ask all of this in the name of the one whose life, death, and resurrection makes all the difference, Jesus the Christ. Amen. Like many of you, my first adventure with a seed happened when I was around first grade, when my tiny fingers pushed a seed into a Dixie cup full of dirt. My classmates and I then lined our Dixie cups up on the windowsill and so that the sunlight could drench them every single day. Do you remember how when you did that, there was always that one kid who thought if a little bit of water is good, then a lot of water has got to be great? I was that kid. I must have drenched that poor seed. It didn't stand a chance. It was the first moment that I saw the words of Psalm 23, "My cup runneth over," come to life. Fast forward a few years, when I'm in seminary, I was living in the dormitory there on campus, and the campus was built around the 1960s when they were making use of a lot of cinder block. And so all the walls of my apartment were cinder block. And somebody had this great idea that it would be aesthetically pleasing to paint that white. It had all the warmth and welcome of a hospital waiting room. And so I decided to go out and purchase a green plant that I put in the corner near a windowsill. That plant kind of became a metaphor for my spiritual life. There were times when I would remember to water that plant and care for it. I'd pick the dead leaves up and out of it, and I would nurture it. And then there were other times when I was busy studying or busy courting Gina or just forgot to tend to that poor plant in the corner until its leaves started to droop a little bit, and I could almost hear it making one of those thirsty sounds, crying out for water, and I'd go and I'd dump some water on it, and then the cycle would repeat. I'd care for it for a while and then forget about it, and isn't that the way sometimes it is in our spiritual life? We got moments when we feel like we're being drenched by God's presence, when our roots are deep, and then there are other times when our souls feel parched. Fast forward a few more years. We land here in Sarasota. Our backyard, I think the previous homeowners took Genesis 1 to be fruitful and multiply seriously, because they must have planted plant after plant after plant, and it was just this kind of jungle back there, this tropical jungle. And so Gina and I started pulling some of those plants out, and we had this brilliant idea that we needed to transplant some of them. What I noticed when we went to transplant those plants were two things. The first was, I was used to Midwestern plants, where the roots sink down deep into the soil. I think it's probably to escape the snow, like most of us did. But those roots of the plants in our backyard here in Florida, they were closer to the surface. They were shallow, probably to get the rainwater as quickly as possible. So the roots weren't quite as deep, but what I did notice is that all of them were tangled up together. We separated some of those roots out and we put them in another place in our backyard. And I need to confess to you this morning that I kind of forgot to water those plants. Do you know what happens when you force a plant to undergo the warm Florida sunshine and it isn't raining outside? That poor plant withered and died quicker than you could ever imagine. As you're holding on to that seed this morning, think about those words that Jesus said centuries ago unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. Now let's set the scene once again for ourselves here. It is Palm Sunday when Jesus uttered those words. He's already ridden triumphantly into Jerusalem, in through the back door, and there's all this chanting and cheering of the crowds. They're holding those palm branches like pom-poms, welcoming Jesus as the Messiah into their midst. And there's this anticipation, this excitement, this energy that's hanging in the air. And everyone is sort of wondering, what's going to happen next? Jesus dismounts from that donkey. And what happens next, according to John's Gospel, is some Greeks come to see Jesus. Now the word Greek here is code language. It means outsider, foreigner, somebody who is definitely not Jewish, but who has come for some reason, for some interest in Passover celebration. So these Greeks come and want to see, want to talk with Jesus. Eventually they get to see him, and Jesus utters those words that you heard this morning. Unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. Now usually, what we do with these words of wisdom from Jesus is maybe on the surface, I think there are two reactions. The first reaction is that I can almost imagine the shift that would have gone from this cheering crowd saying, woohoo, Jesus is the man, to sort of feeling like, wah, wah. Right? What kind of thing is that to say? Well, then we take those words and we kind of put them in context. We think, well, Jesus is just talking about his upcoming death. After all, this is Palm Sunday. The shadow of Good Friday is starting to become bigger and bigger and bigger. He's just talking about himself, but when we do that, we sort of hold those words at a distance. We don't want them to get too close to us, right? But if we let those words, unless a kernel falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. If we let those words come as close as that seed you're holding in your hand, we might notice, maybe uncomfortably so, just how true these words are. Let's be clear though, most of us don't like to talk about death. When that topic comes up, even for us as adults, we sort of let the inner toddler in us come out. We stick our fingers metaphorically in our ears as we say, la 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 la, I'm not listening anymore. We don't like to talk about death. We don't want to deal with death. Philip Simmons, in that foreword to the book we're reading as a church, Learning to Fall, the Blessings of an Imperfect Life, he names very clearly for us. He says, our souls are chained to these mortal bodies. Our souls are chained to these mortal bodies. But it isn't just about that moment when we breathe our last breath. Throughout our life, there are moments in our life, maybe every day, when we experience death. Moments, maybe they're not huge deaths, maybe they're small deaths. Deaths of our bodies not doing exactly what we thought they could do the day before, or the death of a relationship that used to be so vital to us, or just the death or a transition, a change that happens to us. There's this cycle of death and resurrection that happens, or to use the metaphor that Jesus offers to us today, is this transition that a seed goes through. You plant that seed into the ground, and we often don't always think about the transition, the change that a seed goes through. But indeed, a seed needs to die, it needs to change, it needs to be transformed in order to become a plant, or a tree, or a pumpkin, or sunflower. I remember back to high school biology, in those textbooks, back when they had textbooks in the classroom, And there was always that drawing. You had one in your bulletin this morning, that transition that a seed goes through, that metamorphosis that happens underneath it. And that change, part of what I think Jesus is shining a light on for us this morning, is a change that we go throughout our lives. Take that picture out and look at it, if you would, please. And as you're doing that, think where are those seeds of possibility and promise just newly planted in your life? Maybe you've just signed up for a new volunteer opportunity. Or maybe there's a relationship that's happening, or maybe you're thinking of moving, or maybe, like me, you just painted your living room and you're thinking, maybe I should rearrange the furniture too. Where are those new possibilities, those new moments, those seeds that have just been planted in your life? Where are those transitions? Something going on just beneath the surface. I look at this picture and I think about some relationships in my life where something's different. Something has shifted or changed. I can't quite put words to it, but there's something there that's going on. And in those moments, it sort of feels a bit like I've got my foot up in the air and I don't know exactly what the right next step is. It's not quite new, but it hasn't quite become something different. It's somewhere in that messy middle. And then I think about those new sprouts that have just peeked above the soil surface in my life. I look around here at our church. I look at our lay visitation ministry that is just beginning to sprout new life. Or I think about our finances as a church. I think about where we were a year ago and where we are today. We keep saying we're on the right track, we're heading in the right direction. But to be honest, it feels like a new sprout. It's vulnerable, it's different. It isn't quite blossoming fully yet, but we see the promise and the possibility. And then where in your life are you thriving? Is the plant bearing good fruit in meaningful ways? Now there are two truths as you look at this piece of paper that hopefully you heard in those examples I just gave to you. The first truth is that this image of a seed transitioning and growing and moving in our lives, that's true for us as individuals, but that's also true for us collectively as a church. And the other truth is, as you look at this picture, is that we are simultaneously at all four of those stages at once. There are places in our life where there are seeds, and there are places where we're germinating and growing, and there are places where we're just the teeniest, tiniest sprout, and there are places where we're a seed, where we become a sapling and we're thriving. You, me, us together as a church, we're all of that and much, much more. And so here's my invitations for you this week. The first is to take that seed that you're holding and this picture home with you. Don't leave them in the pews for someone else to clean up. Hold on to them. Take them with you this week. And as you do that, I want to invite you during your prayer time this week to take this picture out and think to yourself, where is that place in my life where I'm just like a new seed? And where are things in that messy middle where there's some tiny root maybe starting to come out or a sprout starting to come up, but you're not quite sure what's going to happen or what the right next step is? Where are those places where you feel vulnerable, like a tiny sprout sticking out of the soil? And where are those places where it feels like you're thriving? Maybe what you want to do is add another little piece to this, because we know in Florida that things do thrive and grow very well. So where are those places where you're cutting back or uprooting or weeding something? Think about your own life and write down specific places for each of those stages. Maybe you want to take it and turn it over and do the same exact thing for our church. Where are there seeds? Where are we germinating? Where are we sprouts? And where are we saplings together? And then the second part of this invitation of taking this home is to share it with somebody. Share it with a family member, with a friend. Share it with a fellow church member. This isn't just about you as an isolated individual. The seeds of faith in our life are ways that we can connect and tangle our roots with one another. It's good. It's good this morning to come to the communion table. Communion table that has already been set with two elements that both come from a seed. First a wheat and also a grape seed. A table that has been set, a table that reminds us of God's good creation which we are connected with. A table where we can taste God's grace. That quote from Philip Simmons' book that I put at the top of your bulletin this week reminds us that life is not a problem to be solved. Life is a mystery to be engaged. And in order to engage that mystery, I think fully, we need each other. I think about Jesus. When he called the disciples, he didn't call them to be an individual tutor to each one of them. He called them to be a community. To let those roots get tangled and twisted up the way that I saw in my own backyard. He called them to be a community to support each other, to care for each other, to tend the seeds of faith alongside each other. And so we come to the table this morning with hearts and imaginations and lives wide open. We come to this table this morning with thanksgiving in our heart. Thanksgiving in my heart that it's not up to me to water the seeds of faith around us. That's up to God. That God is the one who offers us the grace and the strength and the love we need for the living out of these days. And God offers that grace, love, peace, and presence no matter where we're at, or if we're in all of these places in our faith, in our life right now. So come. Come to this table of thanksgiving. Come, whoever you are and wherever you are in faith. Come. Thanks be to God. Amen.